Republicans get an item at the top of their wish list as the president is set to announce a plan for offshore drilling up and down the East Coast. One lawmaker unveils an alternative to the Kerry Graham-Lieberman bill. And government investigators in the UK looking into hacked climate science emails reveal what they've learned.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
Good morning, I'm Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for the Energy Report on this 31st day of March 2010. The president is set to announce today a new plan for oil and gas drilling that could tap reserves up and down the East Coast and reverses a long-time ban on most offshore drilling. In a speech on energy security this morning at Andrews Air Force Base, the president is expected to propose allowing exploration from Delaware to central Florida, an area covering nearly 170 million acres of ocean. This includes drilling 50 miles off of Virginia's coast and in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, 125 miles from Florida's Gulf Coast, should Congress let a moratorium expire there. Some new sites planned in Alaska will be canceled. This does also leave in place a moratorium on West Coast drilling. The White House touts this new plan as a way to tap new domestic supplies of energy, reduce U.S. dependence on imported oil, and create jobs. And the plan could help the president gain support for a climate change bill, some believe. It is said to offer very little to environmentalists opposed to offshore drilling. But today's announcement could include other proposals they may like an order for 5,000 hybrid vehicles for the government fleet. Drilling's been banned in most offshore areas of this country more than 20 years on fears of spills hurting the environment. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates the U.S. Atlantic coast waters may hold 37 trillion cubic feet of gas and nearly 4 billion barrels of oil. Details on the Kerry Graham-Lieberman climate bill are still under wraps, but one lawmaker with an alternative to cap and trade is making his plan public. Senator Richard Lugar of Indiana says his energy and climate measure is a practical plan that will reduce dependence on foreign oil and cut emissions without trading allowances. The plan includes higher auto fuel efficiency standards, extending standards currently designed to go through 2016 until 2030, and provide $11 billion in incentives to retire coal-fired power plants with high CO2 emissions. It would also create what Lugar calls a diverse energy standard. That would include renewable fuels, but would also fold in hydropower, marine and hydrokinetic, nuclear, coal-mined methane, waste-to-energy, and CCS technology. The Kerry Graham-Lieberman bill is due out next month after the spring recess. A bill that promotes fuel switching from coal to natural gas in Colorado has passed its biggest test. Tuesday, the state Senate gave its verbal okay to the bill that greenlights Xcel Energy to close or retrofit aging coal-fired plants and give primary consideration to switching to natural gas. The Clean Air bill, negotiated among natural gas representatives, Xcel executives, and environmental groups, requires Xcel to cut carbon and other emissions at least 70% by 2017. Senate Republicans with coal mines and coal-fired power plants in their districts opposed the bill, saying it will cost jobs. But the measure already passed the House. Governor Ritter says he will sign it into law once it reaches his desk. British lawmakers say climate scientists at the University of East Anglia probably held back information but never manipulated climate data on global warming. The House of Commons Science and Technology Committee finished its first government investigation into those emails leaked from the university's climatic research unit. The release of the emails last November, 2 weeks before the Copenhagen climate talks, unleashed charges from skeptics that Director Phil Jones and his team tampered with data to exaggerate the effects of global warming. But this 14-member panel concludes the scientific reputation of Professor Jones and CRU remains intact. The report says nothing in the emails or in the ensuing controversy challenged scientific consensus on global warming or human influence on it. 2 more government investigations are pending. Well, the Copenhagen Accord has the backing of more than 110 nations, led by the U.S. and China. The UN is out with its first formal list of nations signing on to the deal reached at World Climate Talks in December in Copenhagen. It includes other top emitters, India, the EU, Russia, and Japan. The goal, limit global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius, and it promises $10 billion a year in aid for developing nations from 2010 to 2012, rising to $100 billion from 2020. It is not binding, though, and does not spell out what each nation needs to do. Among those not on the list, some OPEC nations, including Saudi Arabia and small island states. The largest oil industry trade group in the nation is suing the EPA over its newly approved biomass-based diesel mandates. The American Petroleum Institute told the U.S. Court of Appeals for D.C. EPA's new mandate is illegal. Last week, EPA finalized its renewable fuel standard. EPA missed the congressional deadline to create a rule by a year and a half. The agency combined 2009 and 2010 biomass-based diesel volumes, makes the entire rule retroactive to January 1st. API and the National Petrochemical and Refiners Association say they're not challenging the overall RFS2 program, nor are they questioning the role of renewable fuels in the nation's transportation mix. But they say the new standard presents an undue burden on refiners and will ultimately cost consumers. Rhode Island regulators have dealt a blow to a proposed offshore wind farm. The Public Utilities Commission has ruled against the project after a study showed power produced there would be more than twice the price National Grid pays for electricity from current sources. Governor Carcieri supports the 8-turbine wind farm proposed off of Block Island, saying it would create jobs and benefit the environment. The project was to be a demonstration for what Deepwater Wind hoped would eventually be a larger offshore farm involving about 100 turbines. Here's a check of goings-on around the Beltway today. At 11, President Obama is expected to give that speech on energy security at Andrews Air Force Base, unveiling a plan to allow vast new domestic offshore drilling. Also at 11, the Pew Center on Global Climate Change has a press-only teleconference to discuss the role of energy efficiency as a corporate strategy. And at 1 p.m., National Research Council holds a public discussion on its report, Understanding Climate's Influence on Human Evolution. That's at the Baird Auditorium at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. That is the Energy Report. Thanks for joining us here in the Energy News Center. For any suggestions or comments about our programming here on Clean Skies News, you can email us at contact@cleanskies.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Susan McGinnis. You're watching Clean Skies News.